Hello aspirants, looking at editorials in question bank for 19th December. The first editorial in the Hindu newspaper is questions from a washout. So this is regarding the winter session of the parliament, which was a complete washout. Even on 18th December, the editorial in Indian Express was winter washout, and similar points were put forth there too. So here we are seeing that the winter session was a washout because of this deadlock between the opposition and the government on demonetization. So the opposition wanted demonetization debate in the parliament, and they wanted this debate to be put to vote in the Lok Sabha. So in the sense that if the voting takes place and if the government fails to get a majority, then it questions the government support in the house and the government may fall to if a no confidence motion is initiated on that. So that is why the government was apprehensive. It did not want to go ahead with the debate, and the stall in Lok Sabha took place. Even in Rajya Sabha, we have seen earlier that Rajya Sabha, the voting power is not having any significance as such on the government's majority, because majority has to be there only in Lok Sabha. So in Rajya Sabha, the question was that the Prime Minister should come in the Rajya Sabha house, answer the questions and apologize to the members of the parliament, because he had said that all those opposing demonetization are corrupt. So that was the point. They wanted an apology and the government refused to adhere to that. So the sessions in both the houses were stalled. Not much work took place in the legislature in this winter session. So only 2 bills were passed. Out of that, one bill was also the money bill. So it could be passed even without Rajya Sabha's significant role by Rajya Sabha, because Lok Sabha passes the bill, Rajya Sabha just has to assent to it. It cannot make any changes to the bill. Within 14 days, it has to return the bill with assent or without assent. So this was the status of the legislative work this session. So there is fear that this may continue in the next budget session too. So that should not take place. So government has the responsibility. Even we saw earlier that even the BJP senior leader said, he made a question that who is running the house. So it's the government's responsibility to ensure that the house runs in full order. It has a very good majority in the Lok Sabha. So what's stopping the government from ensuring that the house is in order? The opposition, the stands which are taken by opposition of opposing the government in whatever matter be the case, is the same as it was done by BJP when UPA government was in power. So the second term of UPA saw BJP opposing anything that the government said. Presently, they are implementing those schemes, programs, but then at that point of time, they were opposing all of it, including the GST, everything, the food security bill, everything was opposed. So this resulted in a policy paralysis situation, and the government was then blamed by the opposition. So something on that same lines, taking a cue from them when they were in opposition, the present opposition is also undertaking such measures. So this is not good for a democracy. This is not good for legislative work to take place. So there is a need for legislative sense prevailing in the legislature and work being done, because what is being lost is people's taxation money, which is used to spend on the parliament's functioning. Plus also the work which will be done is important for government also. So we wanted to initiate the GST bill. The GST bill had to be passed. So that also could not take place. The next financial year will be preponed. So that initiative also had to be announced from the legislative house, but that also could not take place. So this is the status because of present demonetization debate not being allowed with voting. So whose purpose was served can be well understood in this matter. The next editorial in the Hindu newspaper is Bridging the Learning Deficit. So there are plans to have a new education policy too. The national education policy is 5 decades old presently. So there's a need to renew it. So we need better regulation, especially in primary and pre-primary education. So that is one point being put forth, because there is huge amount of investment being made and schools have been set up. But the quality of education also has to be ensured. So there is a huge requirement. The gross enrollment ratio has improved. We have seen all this. There was a learning deficit series which was run by the Hindu for a week. So now this is the editorial comprehensively summing up all that. So we saw that there were all facilities provided. Gross enrollment ratio also increased. Presently it's up to 96% since 2008. So this is very high gross enrollment ratio. Though the number of students, even if you say 4%, it's a huge number which is out of school. They are not enrolled in school. So that is one aspect which still we need to work on. But beyond this, the development which has been made, the raise from 81.6% in 2000 to 2008 96% is a huge increase. But then what is worrying is the dropout rate. So though students are enrolling, but then the dropout rates at a higher class are high. So what are the reasons for these high dropout rates? They should be retained. They should not drop out at a later stage. So this is where we need to work on now, because there are problems with the quality of education being undertaken, and especially with respect to girl child when they are forced to drop out at a certain age too. Teacher absenteeism, teachers not being present in government schools. So that lack of quality and outmoded forms of learning, the methods of learning, pedagogies means the methods of teaching, are outdated presently. So we need to renew all these aspects, bring in quality, bring in resources. Many a times we see that girl children refuse to go to school because there are not proper toilets in schools. So all such things have to be taken into consideration, and it needs to ensure that dropout rates also come drastically down. Then next, about the teaching pattern too, there are two initiatives which were discussed. So one was activity based learning. This we discussed in terms of Tamil Nadu government, the initiative which has been taken, because all these aspects are required, because even ASER, Annual Status of Education Report Survey 2015, had seen that even class 3 and class 5 students could not read a class 2 textbook. So percentage is very low. 23.6% of class 3 students could read a class 2 textbook, and only 48.1% of class 5 students in rural areas could read a class 2 textbook. So this shows the quality of education being provided. So there is a need to work on this. Early childhood care and education, primary, pre-primary education, these are the most important phases for cognitive development, for the brain functioning development of the child. So this has to be, potential has to be tapped here. So now the new methods of learning which are there, one is activity based learning and another one is teaching at the right level. So what are these two? We'll discuss. So teaching at the right level means evaluating the child using a simple assessment method and then grouping them according to their learning level, not according to age and then putting them in a particular grade, first, second or so on. They are according to learning age, they are put in appropriate classes. So that is called teaching at the right level. So then simple measurements again are done to see the ability to read, write, mathematics, basic arithmetic, and when they are able to do that, then they are taken over to the next level. So this is the method of teaching. Second is, what is activity based learning, which is we have seen in Tamil Nadu case. So this is learning through activities, not through textbooks, not rote learning, but through experiments, experiences in within the class. So there are activities which are put forth using cards and other components, and then children are asked to think about it, to to question it, to answer questions based on it. So such an activity is created, and then anything, it may be arithmetic or any aspect, it is done through this method. So this activity based learning helps in better understanding for the students, so they grasp things better than the rote learning from textbooks, just reading and writing notes. So that does not help. So this initiative has been taken by Tamil Nadu government. It has given very good results. It helps in retention also, because students are they interested in attending school, learning something new, taking part in these activities. So this is important. So genuine learning comes through experience. So that is where this helps in both physical, psychological development, and the distance between the child and the teacher is also reduced in these activity based learning. Then the next editorial, this is the Indian Express editorial, Bank on Banks. So presently there have been cases of raids being conducted on banks, the Axis Bank case which has come forth. So these banks being charged of undertaking such illegal activities results in even the trust of the people on the banks being eroded, and that is not good for the overall scenario, because people are putting faith in the banks and depositing their money now in the banks. So if banks are also brought into the domain of corrupt, then where would an individual go? Where would he deposit? The editorial says that there have been so many flip-flops in the modalities in this demonetization process, so many changes. Almost every time you go ahead, there is some new reform, some new change being brought in. So this does not help in the demonetization process. The banks have to accept the deposits. There are provisions put forth that if the bank account holder is KYC compliant. So KYC is know your customer. So know your customer compliance is there, means basic details have been put forth regarding the customer, his name, address, and they have been verified. Then the person's deposits, even if they are unusually large, have to be accepted. So there are limits to when the authorities have to be informed. The IT department has to be informed if the deposits have accepted which are above 50,000 in Jan Dhan accounts, above 2.5 lakh in saving accounts, above 12.5 lakh in current accounts, and any cash transaction which is above 10 lakh is automatically reported to the financial intelligence unit at that level. So these initiatives are already there in place. So the banks have to be functioning effectively under this, and the government does not have to target bank employees and deface them, because what's the government trying to do, the editorial says, is shifting the blame on the banks that they are undertaking corrupt activities. It says though there may be some black sheep, there may be people who are undertaking such activities, but overall the banks are the ones which are supporting the government in this initiative. So nothing should be done that shakes the faith of the people in the banks. So that is what the point editorial is trying to make. They have undertaken special initiatives because 2 lakh ATMs all over have to be recalibrated. That cost is being incurred by the banks. The special security which is required for all this money being transported, the private transport which is undertaken, CCTV requirements which are taken in. So all this is again a charge by the banks. They're putting the charge on the banks, plus also the debit card charges, the merchant discount rates, all these have been waived presently. So all this is also charges are on the bank is taking the burden of all these. So that is why banks are doing their best. There are huge lines all over in banks we are seeing because of demonetization. The employees are the ones who are working with their best, putting in their best efforts. So that has to be appreciated. So that is this. It says that government can't betray its faith in its banks. They are the backbone of the Indian economy. So that's it. Then the next editorial in the Indian Express newspaper is New Channel. So this is regarding the Interstate Water Disputes Act of 1956, which will be amended. So there is an amendment which has been announced by the Union Cabinet. So this amendment now will be put forth in the Parliament. So under this amendment, a permanent agency would be formed. So this permanent body will collect, maintain water data on everything. It will be rainfall, irrigation, interbasin flow. So all the details of all the rivers would be calculated and collected on a regular basis by this body. So it does presently what is the case is, if there is any interstate water dispute, then a tribunal is formed on that, and after the tribunal is formed, the collection of data takes place, and then water disputes are resolved, and that runs into decades too. The Khatri Water Dispute Tribunal took 17 years to give its final award, and even that final award was not acceptable. So there is a need to make changes in the act to take all this into consideration. So that's why collection of data will be a regular process. So this will be the permanent tribunal which will be set up to adjudicate on all interstate water disputes over rivers, and they will be once collecting data regularly. So this will take place. So there will be no separate tribunals. As and when a dispute arises, a tribunal is set up. That will end now. So that is one point. Another point is that the time taken will also be reduced, plus also that the National Water Policy of 2012, which said that a permanent tribunal should be established. So this is in consonance with, the amendment is in consonance with this policy also, because multiple tribunals are sometimes even run against each other's viewpoints. So that does not help the case, because there are same states involved with multiple tribunals. So that is the point. Even a constitution gives special status to these tribunals. So interstate water dispute tribunals, their decisions are supposed to be final. There is no appeal allowed on this award. The tribunal award is final. Even Supreme Court cannot be approached on this. But there have been cases in which Khatri Water Dispute Tribunal awards and other dispute tribunal awards too have been challenged in the Supreme Court too. Because none of the parties, we saw Khatri was very much in news in October as well. So at that time we saw that the tribunal award was not acceptable to all 4 riparian states, and they all wanted the judiciary to look into the matter. So imagine 17 years after which the tribunal gives its award, and that is also not satisfying anyone. So in such scenarios, then Supreme Court accepted the petition too, that there is special leave petition, SLP, under which the Supreme Court can accept any provision, any case which is coming forth which does not fall into any other category. So in SLP category, these petitions were accepted challenging the tribunal's award. Of course, of late we heard that then the BJP government presently said that the Supreme Court has no jurisdiction because tribunal's award is supposed to be final. But then the Supreme Court of course has its say. So that is again an area of debate, that how far can you interpret, how do you interpret the laws related to the tribunal and powers of the Supreme Court to undertake judicial review. So we can just hope that this permanent water tribunal, interstate water tribunal, gives awards which are just and acceptable to all states and the states adhere to these awards. We'll have to wait and watch what happens after the amendment is passed and these cases go forth. So this is regarding the well-known Kaveri Water Dispute Tribunal, the 4 riparian states and the allocation, the award which was given by the tribunal. So this is here, the Kaveri River Basin is shown here. So the 4 riparian states and how much was allotted. The other major interstate river disputes are these: Ravi and Bias, Punjab, Haryana and Rajasthan; Narmada. Then on Mahadai, this is also quite often in news, Mahadai River, Goa, Karnataka and Maharashtra. Krishna Water Dispute Tribunal is also there. Godavari, again there is dispute. Periyar River, there is dispute. Godavari, another, on Babli Barrage there is a dispute. Vamsadhara, again a river on dispute. So these are rivers on which there are disputes amongst the states, the riparian states through which these rivers flow. Then the next we look at the question bank. So I have not picked up any question from the Hindu articles. The first lead article in the Hindu newspaper is the unmaking of Parliament. So that is regarding again the same thing, winter session of Parliament. We already discussed it in detail in the editorial. So there is nothing more on that. Democracy and what is required for an effective functioning democracy. We are a representative democracy. The powers, functions of the representatives, how should they function. So all those points are discussed. No major significant suggestions or anything which can be put in an answer do not come forth. There are simple logical explanations given which anyway a common person who knows everything, especially an aspirant who knows all the perspective of this issue, can write. So I have skipped that. There is no scope of a question on that. The other article on the perspective page 1 is on BCCI. Again, BCCI issue we have discussed quite in detail. So there is no scope of another discussion. We don't need to go through that article. The other article on editorials, that we don't need to discuss. Plus the last article which is there is UP's real growth story. Again, this article is political, so we don't need to discuss it at all. So there is no important article from UPSC exam perspective, answer writing perspective. So I have picked up Indian Express articles. These are 2 Indian Express articles on the basis of which the question has been framed and we'll discuss. The first question is on holding simultaneous elections in Parliament and state legislature. So this was a proposal given long back by the present government. PM Narendra Modi asked for a debate on this matter. So this was a question which we had put forth in April 2016 question bank, and again in September the same question was repeated because this quite often comes in news and has been debated. So based on all these articles which have been in news and presently the Indian Express article 2, the points which are new from that article have been put together and this is being discussed now. So this is same considering the points of all these articles. So the first thing is, there is this term called permanent campaign. Means there are campaigning, electoral campaigning taking place in some state or the other at any point of time. So the government, the party in power at the center to the important ministers, even the prime minister addresses these election campaigns and rallies, and that takes over the governance time. So this takes place, there is no year in which there are no elections taking place in any state or central legislature. So at any point of time there are elections scheduled. So that is why the government is in permanent campaign mode. So this affects governance, little time for governance. Also this results in populist policies being put forth, because before elections generally populist policies are put forth. So that makes it difficult for the government to take difficult decisions. So long-term benefits which may have, rather than taking populist measures which are having only short-term benefits. So this is a strain on the government because of this permanent campaigning which is taking place. So that is why, to put an end to this, the suggestion which has been put forth is there should be simultaneous elections in the parliament. For the parliament, the state legislatures, and even the present Prime Minister Narendra Modi has said that even the panchayat level elections, all 3 should take place simultaneously. So this has been a suggestion put forth and there is a call for debate on this matter. So what are the pros and cons of this, we'll discuss. But before that, we'll also see what have been the recommendations of various bodies, authorities on this, and also what has been the history of elections in state and legislature and central level over the years. So first of all, this is not the first time that such a suggestion has been put forth. It was part of BJP manifesto even in 2009 elections, and even for 2014 elections, this was part of BJP manifesto. So even the BJP leader, top BJP leader L.K. Advani had also put forth this issue and suggested this. So now the Law Commission, the 170th Law Commission's report, it concurs with this. So it is in 1999, it called for electoral reform and said that the cycle of elections every year should be put an end to, and simultaneous elections should take place once in 5 years. Means once simultaneous elections have taken place, means Lok Sabha elections have also taken place, all state legislature elections also take place, then they have a 5-year term. So this was a recommendation. Of course, there's infeasibility in its implementation, because how can this be ensured? What if the Lok Sabha, the government loses its majority in the Lok Sabha, say in a year or within a year or two, then what happens? Because that is what we have, a parliamentary form of government. In a presidential form of government, this is possible too, because parliamentary form, the executive comes from the legislature, and legislative majority is the base on which the executive is formed. So without majority in the legislature, government cannot be formed. So how does this balancing take place? Then what happens in those cases? And if any one state, if something happens in any state, then what happens? So is the government which has lost majority continue? So that goes against the spirit of democracy. And if not, then again we'll have elections conducted, then the purpose is not served. There will not be simultaneous elections later. So this will be only one time. So that is the question, that how can this be put into effect? So that is the point where suggestions are required. The Parliamentary Standing Committee's recommendations were also on the same lines. It gave a suggestion. So this was Parliamentary Committee. So it said that 2-phase election schedule can take place. Means Lok Sabha and Assembly polls will take place simultaneously for some states, and later in midterm, means 2.5 years, again elections can take place to state assemblies. So twice it would take place, not once every 5 years, but twice, 2.5 years. But again the same question remains. Because even if it's a shorter term, then too there will be some time, the case that government loses its majority, then what should be done? So if you allow the government without majority to continue, that goes against the spirit of democracy. So this is the Election Commission. As presently, the Indian Express article and the latest news is that Election Commission has also accepted and suggested that okay, this simultaneous elections in state and central legislature can be undertaken, but it has put forth some shortcomings too, because if elections are taking place over states over a period of time, then the electoral machinery is limited. That is used in that particular state only. It is used at the Lok Sabha level in phases. But if it takes place throughout, then the electoral EVM machines which will be required, that will be a constraint. Even the VVPAT machines, that is voter verifiable paper audit trail. So that is a voter verification done and the complete audit done on that. So VVPAT machines which need to be put forth, that will be required in large numbers. So that is one point, because you are electing the central legislature too and even state legislature too. So at every point there will be these machines required for both purposes. So how will that be done is a question which the Election Commission has put forth. That is a logistics problem. So we'll see how that can be adjusted to. Maybe there will be some innovative technical solution which can come out for this too. Even a long-term suggestion may be that you can have e-voting, electronic voting. So even voting through a website or something, but there needs to be clear safeguards put forth. It does take place in some countries, electronic voting, online voting. So in that case, then it becomes quite simple. So we'll have to wait how this matter is also resolved. But then another point is that the Election Commission says that local body elections being held simultaneously will be very, very difficult, because that is third thing put forth along with the two things. So 3 elections together means how many EVMs and how to how to program those ETMs, or should be EVMs, or how should we need different EVM machines, 3 in one place. So that is whole logistic issue which needs to be resolved. So that point has been put forth by Election Commission. Now looking at the history, that simultaneous elections did take place in India. So it started off simultaneous elections. The first Lok Sabha elections in 1951-52 were simultaneous elections. In Lok Sabha, first Lok Sabha was also formed, and all state legislative assemblies were formed. This continued for the next 3 cycles. That is 1957, 1962 and 1967. Full 5-year terms completed. Lok Sabha also and all state legislatures also. But then the premature dissolution started, and then even the Lok Sabha in 1970 saw premature dissolution. The 5th Lok Sabha also extended its term by 1 year under the national emergency. So this all again disrupted. So we have seen even Lok Sabha dissolving prematurely, state legislatures dissolving prematurely, and such is the scenario that in the last 30 years there have been no year in which there is no election held in any state legislature or like central legislature. So there's always elections taking place, and no simultaneous elections have come forth post that. So we have lost that track completely. So now if this brought again, how long will it continue is the question, and how can you make sure that it is legitimate too? Because if the government is not having majority in the legislature, then it is illegitimate government. The pros and cons of this, again, the pros are that it will check election expenditure, because every time electoral campaigning is done, political parties undertake expenditure. So if they have to do only one electoral campaigning, that is good for them. They will not have to spend every time for every state and for central elections. So they will save their money, check election expenditure. It will save a lot of money. Of course, resources would also be saved. The teachers who are undertaken, and this election staff, all those people will be relieved. There will not be cycle of elections taking place. Then even free the central government from populism. So populist measures will not be put forth just before elections, but governance will be paid attention to, which is again political parties do undertake that. So that will stop. Then it will end the repeated pause on decision making because of the model code of conduct. So when the election is scheduled, there's a model code of conduct imposed sometime before the election. So at that point of time, no new policy initiatives can be announced, because then they may adversely impact the voters' behavior, and voter may vote in favor of that party in power. So that's why this model code of conduct is there. So again, this will not be undertaken repeatedly. So that will be good for the government. So these are the pros. The cons, of course, are that how to fix the term of the legislatures, wherein constitutional and democratic process is also upheld, plus also that the fixed term and simultaneous elections continue, that is also upheld. That is the biggest challenge. So how can this be fixed? There is no point which comes forth. That any suggestion which you can think of and is feasible would be great. So that is what we need. If this can be done, this deadlock or this contradiction can be fitted, then great. Then we can have simultaneous elections. So government is also looking for an answer. It has asked, the present Prime Minister Narendra Modi government has asked on its app and on its website to MyGov that put forth suggestions that how can this take place. So we are waiting for any innovative suggestion which can come forth, which is legitimate too, which is within the constitutional boundaries. Then the second point is voter behavior. So this is one minor point against simultaneous elections, that when simultaneous elections take place at the central level and in state legislatures, voters will vote for the same political party at the central level, at the state level too. So this goes against the whole idea of federalism, because in a federalism we want central government and we want state governments representing the state aspirations. So then that aspect will be completely lost. So that is another point, because it has been the case. It is a study done and it's generally well accepted that voter behavior is such that they will vote for the same political party at the central and state legislature. Then whole exercise makes no sense, because then what is the need for state legislature? Then we can have a unitary government only. What is the point of federalism? So this federalism is essential because we are a socially diverse country. So this is another point which is put forth. So finally, the conclusion, which is from this Indian Express article of 19th December. The conclusion, it says that this is a difficult scenario, but there are two areas which it has highlighted. One is regarding Rajya Sabha elections. So Rajya Sabha elections, indirect elections, take place every 2 years. So those are elections taking place from state legislative assemblies. So there it is seen that this 2-year phase has been broken, because in some time when the seat allocated to a particular state, the state government is not in place, state legislature is dissolved or something, then that is delayed. So because of this 2-year term has not been maintained. So there is a need to get back on track in Rajya Sabha elections, that the restoring the biennial nature of Rajya Sabha polls should take place. So that is one suggestion which has been put forth. And another, it's saying that we can have voting like e-voting, because we are going digital too. So e-voting can take place, remote voting on mobile phones, even Aadhaar linkage can be provided to it for authentication. So this can be introduced. So this will also help in facilitating electoral process, and the huge expenditure on the entire electoral machinery can be drastically reduced. So these are the points. The next article which has been picked up is again from the Indian Express newspaper. This is regarding Prime Minister's Fasal Bima Yojana. So the question is, Prime Minister's Fasal Bima Yojana was launched in February 2016 with a view to de-risk agriculture from the vagaries of nature. Evaluate the performance of this scheme over the year. So we already have schemes which were initiated by the former government, former UPA government. Even before that, the former NDA government had initiated this National Agricultural Insurance Scheme, which was modified as MNAIS. So these schemes were there for agricultural insurance, but then there were the amount which was insured was quite low. So that did not serve any purpose. Even the crop damage, if it takes place, the assessment which took place at the time of cutting the crop. So it was a time consuming process, and the compensation which was paid to the farmers was quite delayed by months and sometimes even year. So that did not serve the purpose for the farmers. Presently, the new scheme, Prime Minister's Fasal Bima Yojana, which has just been launched, and it's not completed a year yet. So this is having some modifications here, because there's a technical committee now which will be appointed in each district to decide the scale of finances of the sum which needs to be insured, taking into consideration all the costs incurred by the farmers. So this is one step that sum insured will raise hopefully by this. Then second is the premium which they will have to pay on the insurance. So this premium sum will be decided on actual basis. So earlier it was done based on the actual calculation data collected. So actual basis actually means that this is by predicting, not by full complete knowledge data being in place and then considering. So this actual basis is good because this premium can be decided easily at an earlier stage. So that's good for the farmers. So there'll be no cap on this premium too, but this premium would be decided by the public and private insurance companies. They will decide. So this will undertake, there'll be a bidding on this. So it is expected that when so many come forth, then premiums, because if there's competition, then the premiums they'll demand will be lowest. So because lower the premium that they demand, more the insurance which will be undertaken by them. So this was the point. Even the premium amount has been subsidized. It will be only 2% for kharif crops, 1.5% for rabi crops, and 5% for annual commercial horticulture crops, including horticulture crops. So remaining premium, whichever is decided, that premium has to be paid by the government, and that also will be divided half-half between the central government and the state government. So this has been undertaken. We'll see in the assessment the actual payments are not coming forth. So who suffers eventually, because if the public-private insurance companies do not get the premium payments, of course they will not give the insurance amount. So this is one lacuna which is seen. So of course the policy program is always good, but in implementation there are always issues. Another point which has been there is that high technology needs to be used. Smartphones, GPS, drones and satellites need to be used to assess. So there will be complete accuracy, transparency and faster assessment of any damage, and settling claims will take place quickly. So now if you consider an assessment, the positive part of this Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana has been that the area insured has increased. Number of farmers insured has substantially increased. Even the sums insured have been increased. So that is positive. So at this rate, it says India may soon have half of its cropped area insured within 3 to 5 years. This success has been there, but what is there is that the premium has also increased. So there is actual premium. So premium is also by not having complete data. So by hypothesis, by how far it would go, predicting kind of prediction is made and premium is decided. So the actual premium which was expected to actually go down has increased. So they kind of these insurance companies come together and they have not let the premium go down. So then that high premium burden goes on the government, and the state governments are reluctant to pay. So that finally the sufferers are eventually the farmers. So it says that premium rates have gone as high as even 20%. So then how will that be taken care of? So this is a second problem in the policy. It's first problem actually. First point was not the problem, it was positive. This is the first problem. Second point. Third point is reluctance of state governments. So even reluctance on paying the compensations, the active action which is taken by the state government on the implementation and majorly on the payment of premium is not positive. So state government reluctance makes the entire scheme unworkable. And fourth is technology use. So there is a requirement that technology has to be used, smartphones have to be used, but it is seen that in implementation actually technologies are not used, smartphones are not available with the employees who are sent for assessment. So drones can easily be used, smartphones can easily be used, but they are not put into effect. So This is the main point, because it says litmus test of any insurance scheme lies in how quickly it can assess top damages to the farmers and quickly settle their claims. So then only they will ensure that in future the farmer does not suffer. Otherwise it carries on in the next cycle too, because farmer is already in a mess. So that is why this early settlement of claims requires technology being used, and that is missing. So these are the points. So the conclusion, the article says that unless a bold policy is matched by effective implementation, it will not deliver fully. So this is what we are seeing with respect to Pradhan Mantri's Fasal Bima Yojana. So that is it. These are the articles which we needed to discuss. Thank you so much.